Welcome back to another episode of NFT Catcher Podcast. We'd like to remind everybody that nothing on the show is meant as financial advice, and to please do your own research. Thank you, and enjoy the show.
Now the subject is NFTs.
They're known as non-fungible tokens, or NFTs.
NFTs are exploding in popularity.
This is a technology that will forever change the way people interact.
So it is happening whether you understand it and like it or not.
This phenomenon is moving. The digital.
You have now joined Jenny from the blockchain and Michael Keene on the NFT Catcher Podcast.
What's up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the NFT Catcher Podcast with me, Jenny from the blockchain, and my co-host, Michael Keene. For today's interview, we have Casey Rodarmor, the creator of Bitcoin Ordinals, joining us. Casey, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Funny story. So when I started working on Ordinals, so I've been working on it for a long time, and I wasn't really into the NFT scene. And so at a certain point, I was like, okay, I'm making, these inscription things, which are like these, digital art objects on Bitcoin or whatever. And I'm like, okay, I got to start listening to some NFT podcasts. And so the two NFT podcasts that I did not hate were Rug Radio and NFT Catcher Pod.
Hey.
So I'm actually legitimately like longtime listener and fan of the pod. And it was actually incredibly useful for me as sort of like a Bitcoiner and not into the NFT scene to listen to you guys. I found it like super helpful, and you guys are very non-shilly while still being interested in markets, and still like a good mix of being interested in markets and the art and the community without being like shilly and stupid. So, and then when Ordinals started blowing up, I was like going on a million podcasts and doing a million like media appearances, which were mostly fucking stupid. Not the podcasts, the media appearances. The podcasts were great. The media appearances were mostly stupid. And I was trying to schedule. I reached out to Michael, I think originally like months ago, right? But then the scheduling just never worked. But I had said that I, wanted to do it, and so I'm very happy to finally be talking to you guys. So yeah, it's awesome to be here.
Epic.
Yeah, it's awesome when cool people reach out to come on the pod, because it's like, we often do the outreach, right? Because we're like, oh, we want these certain people on. And then when it's like somebody awesome reaches out to you to come on, you're like, what? That's amazing. Like, of course we want you on. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad you reached out to Michael and that we're finally making this happen. Bitcoin Ordinals, we were talking a lot before this. There's a lot we got to get into, but you were kind of telling us how you're not really into Ethereum NFTs at all, and you're kind of a bit of a Bitcoin maxi. So this is going to be a totally different episode for our listeners, because we do talk about ETH NFTs a lot.
Totally.
So this would be fun, unique perspective.
Yeah, and I should say that there's a lot of the Ethereum NFT community that I like. There's a lot of the Ethereum NFT art that I like, and actually the thing that made me take NFTs seriously was basically art blocks.
Oh, okay.
I've sort of known about NFTs for a long time. 2017, I saw like punks and apes and stuff, and I just wasn't super inspired by it. And I had sort of considered making NFTs, and I'm not like an ideological Bitcoin maximalist. I just they're just like technical and decentralization problems that I perceive with Ethereum. So I never really got into it. But then I think it was like end of 2021 or mid 2021 that I saw art blocks, and I just thought it was like amazing art. I saw amazing generative art, and I've made actually a reasonable amount of generative art. If you go to my website, rodarmor.com, there's a bunch of random like AI generated art, some sort of programmer art. And I've done at this point 3 sort of audio reactive visuals engines, which are sort of generative visuals engines that they're use various techniques to, audio comes in and weird like audio reactive visualizer type stuff comes out. And so when I saw art blocks, I was like, oh, this is cool. There's like a market and an interest for the kind of art that I've made for a long time, mostly for free, sort of thanklessly, just kind of like being like, hey, if I get a projector, can I like, do something at your club or whatever? And that made me, I thought about issuing NFTs, like my own NFTs, and selling them on Ethereum. But because of, and I don't think it's really useful for me to get super negative about Ethereum, but because of the technical problems that I perceive with Ethereum and the social problems I perceive with Ethereum development process, I felt like I could make NFTs on Ethereum, but I couldn't encourage anybody to really buy them. I wouldn't feel good about that. It's all this complicated shit, which we can get into. And so then I was like, okay, well, I want to figure out a way that I can do this on Bitcoin sort of natively in a way that I would feel like comfortable both making my own art and encouraging people to buy it. And so that's when I started noodling on it. I think I started noodling on it in late 2021. I actually found an email to a friend of mine where I sort of outlined the basics of what became Ordinals, and it was late 2021. It was like December of 2021. And then so I worked on that and started the implementation. And there's kind of two layers to it. There's Ordinals, which make the individual, which Satoshis on Bitcoin, give them a unique identity and allow them to be tracked. And then there's inscriptions on top of that, which is associating a file or a piece of digital content with one of those trackable sats. And so I created Ordinals, like this sort of trackable sat system, as a vehicle for inscriptions. Like, stop me when this gets too boring, but Bitcoin doesn't have.
It's interesting. It's like it's in depth. I love hearing it though. Keep going.
Yeah. So Bitcoin doesn't have an account model. Like on Ethereum, you have your account, which is, a 0x and then a hex string. And that's like your permanent identity on Ethereum. When you own an NFT, it's assigned to your account. And then when you transfer it to somebody else's account. But Bitcoin fundamentally doesn't have an account model. It has a different model, which is called the UTXO set model. It's probably hard to explain in a nutshell, but basically you can think of it as your Bitcoin wallet. It has a bunch of coins in it of different values, and those are the Bitcoin you own. And every time you want to receive new Bitcoin, you generate a new address. Address reuse is actually discouraged on Bitcoin for privacy reasons. And so because of the details of Bitcoin, there wasn't like something that could own a inscription. And like, because these UTXOs, these like coins in your wallet, they're destroyed when a transaction spends them and created when you send coins to a new person. So it didn't make sense to like assign an NFT to a one of these like coins in your wallet. And that's the reason for this trackable sat layer, which is called Ordinals, and sometimes I playfully refer to as ordinal theory. Then once I had that and this ability to identify individual sats and transfer them between wallets using normal Bitcoin transactions, then inscriptions came very quickly after that as a way of creating and assigning an inscription, which is basically just an NFT, to one of these trackable sats. And then once one of these sats is inscribed, you can use ordinal theory to transfer them using normal Bitcoin transactions. And so, I sort of came up, I wanted to start doing it like mid 2021, maybe, noodled on it for a few months, came up with the final version around the final version of Ordinals, trackable sats, end of 2021, and then implemented it throughout 2022, mostly by myself, but then also with a couple of paid programming apprentices that I hired. Shout out Liam and Raphael, both very, very talented young programmers. And then inscriptions, I think a lot of people were kind of confused. Among Bitcoiners, I had been talking about it a lot, and they knew about this trackable sat thing, and they didn't know that it was intended for inscriptions to create this like NFT like, thing on Bitcoin. And then when inscriptions came out, I think I came up with the design like, I think end of 2022, and then it went live on mainnet beginning of 2023. So like January 20th, I believe, was when it finally flipped over, and nobody paid attention to it for the entire like year and a half that I was like telling everybody about it and like posting on Twitter, and I did Twitter Spaces that like 5 people would join. I mean, at most, like sometimes it was just nobody would show up. But then when the flip was switched, the switch was flipped, and all of a sudden there was real money involved. Like it blew up. It absolutely blew up. And a lot of like Bitcoin maxis, like quote unquote Bitcoin maxis, because I don't know, it's complicated, didn't like it. They were like, you can't, have fun on Bitcoin, and you can't stick your data on Bitcoin and whatever. And then they got really upset. And I think that is kind of what drove like the media hype cycle, because there was this really juicy story. Like now there's NFTs on Bitcoin, and like Bitcoin maxis are like seething. And then like things absolutely exploded. We're up to like 3 million inscriptions. People are Can I swear? Can I use the?
Yep.
Can I swear on the pod? Yes, they're shitcoining on Bitcoin. They're issuing dumbass fucking tokens on Bitcoin. It's called BRC20. It's some of the dumbest shit I've ever seen. But yeah, now we're up using inscriptions. I mean, good on them for coming up with a way to issue shitcoins on Bitcoin. And now we're up to like 3 million inscriptions. It's gone ape shit. It's gone fully, absolutely nuclear. It's fully out of my control. So that kind of brings us to the present day.
Wow.
So you didn't create it for people to make NFTs on.
No, I absolutely did. You did?
Okay.
Yeah. Just that there were kind of these two stages. Like first, I knew that I wanted to make something. The term NFT I dislike for sort of personal reasons. But yeah, I'll just give up. I'm on the NFT Catcher pod. I'm going to use the word NFT. So yeah, no, I always wanted to make NFTs, but because Bitcoin doesn't have the infrastructure for that, and it doesn't have arbitrary smart contracts, I sort of had to create this other layer of ordinals and trackable sats so that the NFTs would have somewhere to live and you could like transfer them. So basically there's this like, normally Bitcoin Satoshi is the smallest subunit of a Bitcoin. They're just sort of, you don't know which Satoshi you have. You just have some number of Satoshis. They don't have an individual identity. But then there's this weird like ordinal theory thing that I created to track the individual Satoshis across transactions as an opt-in thing. Like if you want to ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist, you absolutely can, and it doesn't change anything. And then once I did that, then I came up with inscriptions, which is essentially NFTs, these art objects, pieces of content that are assigned to an individual sat and then are tracked and transferred in the same way that those sats are tracked.
What's a sat? How would you describe a sat?
A sat is 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin. So the unit, one Bitcoin.
Oh, Satoshi.
Exactly. Yeah, one sat. Yep,
Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
I didn't know it was for that. Okay.
So in the Bitcoin protocol, the unit of a Bitcoin doesn't exist. That's purely a human convention because talking about large numbers of sats would be inconvenient. In the actual Bitcoin protocol, it only deals in Satoshis. Satoshis are the thing that are the native unit of the Bitcoin protocol.
How did you learn all of this? Like, where did you learn? I don't know. What's your background before like you creating Bitcoin ordinals?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. So yeah, I studied computer science at UC Berkeley. I graduated in 2009. I'm old. I'm 40, and so I have a background as a computer science. As a programmer, I worked at a few giant evil tech companies. Like I worked at Oculus, not doing anything interesting, just moving JSON blobs around. And I worked at Google, and I also worked at Chaincode Labs, which is a Bitcoin sort of open source R&D company. Basically, just being a longtime programmer, longtime Bitcoiner, very interested in the tech. And also an open source dev. I have another project called Just, which is sort of a productivity tool for programmers. It allows you to save and run commands that you might need a lot while you're working on a project. And that actually has a lot of users. So I just sort of like a general background in programming and open source development, and also a long time interest in Bitcoin and always learning how the tech works. I also I host the SF Bitcoin Developers Meetup, which is a monthly technical meetup in San Francisco, where we basically every month we just talk about the technical developments and open source developments in Bitcoin over the last month. So yeah, basically, so like short answer is like I'm a programmer and also a massive obsessive about Bitcoin. I've been obsessed with Bitcoin for a long time, so I read all about it and try to learn how everything works.
Who red pilled you?
Don't you mean orange pilled me?
Orange pilled you, yeah.
I think
Did you just stumble upon it, or someone like introduced you?
Yeah, I definitely stumbled upon it. I didn't know anybody in my personal circle who was into Bitcoin, but I got into Bitcoin in 2013, and I think I just read about it on Reddit, and I was like, okay, that's interesting, but it reminded me, like, maybe it was like, I didn't understand what it was. I thought maybe it was like World of Warcraft gold or something. And so I just ignored it for like a few months. And then I saw it again. And then I was like, okay, I think this is actually something different. And I just read all about it, like everything I could about it, ran the code, and just kind of convinced myself that it worked. And then I was like, okay, like now I'm obsessed with this. Now this is the thing that I'm obsessed with. Basically, because I hate the government. I think the government is incompetent. And most of the things that it does, I think it's pretty bad at. and having the ability to print money, issue debt, and collect taxes. As a raving libertarian kind of guy, I would prefer that the government didn't have the ability to do that. And Bitcoin removes the government's ability to do that in as much as people adopt it. So it's once I convinced myself that it worked, I was also pretty convinced that it would be a good thing.
My God, I know you had a question.
Yeah, no, it's all good. It's pretty wild. I mean, that must have been, being such a Bitcoin person, that must have been insane, because Ordinals took over the whole space for like whatever it was, a month, where it was really like, that's all anybody could talk about. Every Twitter space, everybody, Taproot wizards, and now it's crazy. I remember the race to 100,000 and the race to 1 million. Like, I remember all that. That must feel insane to you.
Absolute madness. And like the amount of stuff that people have built is also insane. People ask me like, hey, have you heard of like Ordinals Hub or like Ord.io or like XYZ? And I'm like, no, I have no idea. Like I know basically 1% of 1% of the things that are going on in the space. So it's completely insane. It's completely insane how it's blown up. And I think it's really blown up because of, the fact that it's very simple. It's actually a very, very simple protocol. I basically designed it to be as simple as possible. And it's also not something that relies on, a lot of projects in the space, especially a lot of like, very complicated chains and bridges and dexes and stuff like that. They're extremely complicated. They're like Rube Goldberg machines. And even the people who, they rely on a bunch of assumptions. And a lot of the time they're unfinished. They're like, okay, this is going to work if we do some future work. I don't know, what are some projects to pick on? Like a lot of Ethereum L2s that talk about being like some sort of like decentralized like L2. If you look at the code, there are these admin keys, which means that they basically amount to like a multi-sig wallet that's controlled by a company. But Ordinals is, it's very simple, and it doesn't rely on any assumptions, and it doesn't have its own token. I didn't print any tokens. I don't have more ordinals or inscriptions than anybody else. And in fact, I've only made 2 inscriptions, while everybody else has been going ham, like degenning like crazy people.
Did you make number one and 2? Do you have like the real early ones?
I have number 0. Thank God I did.
Nice.
But yeah, like so I think it was that simplicity that attracted people to it. And then also Bitcoiners, like there's a, I think, justified dislike of tokens, of people printing their own tokens to do X, Y, or Z, or claiming that it's necessary for some, platform or whatever. And so I think the fact that Ordinals does not have a token and does not like, I'm not privileged in any way in the protocol. I don't hold some like backdoor key. I didn't issue a bunch of tokens that now I have a huge percentage of the supply. And I think that people responded well to that. And that's part of why it got so popular. And also a lot of Bitcoiners some Bitcoiners think that it's sort of frivolous, or that there might be technical problems with storing data in the Bitcoin blockchain, but they don't have like a moral or ethical problem with it, like they might have with a lot of projects that print their own token. And that's actually one very important part of Ordinals that was a very important part of me. I have issues with the way that NFT content on Ethereum is stored. A lot of the time it's stored on IPFS. IPFS sort of bills itself as the permanent web, but it's not. It's basically like BitTorrent. And Arweave has like unsustainable tokenomics. Basically all the ways that NFT content is stored on Ethereum, there are often a lot of problems with that. And so inscriptions are stored in Bitcoin transactions. And as long as Bitcoin continues, that content is never going away. So it's a way to sort of make art in a very permanent way. IPFS stuff usually stays around, but it can go away. If nobody bothers to continue to make it available to the network, it will go away. And I know that there are at least a few cases of NFT collections on ERC 721s going away because of IPFS. So those are the main things those are the main things that I think people like.
You have to continue to pay IPFS, don't you?
Well, so IPFS is like, if it's basically somebody, you don't need to pay to keep files on IPFS, but somebody needs to run a IPFS node and continue serving those files when people request it. If you have an ERC-721 token that points to a file on IPFS, the ERC-721 contains a hash of that file. And so if you have the file, you can verify that that is the correct hash, but there's nothing stopping the file from going away. And obviously there's some ERCs, Ethereum NFTs, which are on chain. For example, I think Nouns is on chain. There are other, like, I don't know if CryptoPunks is on chain, but there are ways of storing data on chain on Ethereum such that it won't go away. Although that is winds up being pretty expensive. Strangely enough, it's actually cheaper to stick data in a Bitcoin transaction than it is to stick data in a Ethereum transaction. I was actually very surprised when I learned that. I assumed that, you know, it would be like orders of magnitude more expensive on Bitcoin, but it's actually pretty cheap.
And there were NFTs on Bitcoin, if I'm not mistaken, and in some respect, right?
Yeah, Rare Pepes. What are your thoughts on an emblem vault and everything?
Well, it depends on your definition of on Bitcoin. Generally, like Bitcoiners, they draw a pretty sharp distinction between things that have their own token, that have some additional token, and things that don't. This is kind of the big cultural gulf between people who consider themselves Bitcoiners or Bitcoin maxis or whatever, and the rest of the space. So I mention that because Rare Pepes are on Counterparty, and Counterparty has its own token. It has its own token. So, and also it is in some sense on Bitcoin, but Counterparty integrates very badly with Bitcoin. You can't hold a Counterparty asset in a normal Bitcoin wallet, and you can't use the normal sort of Bitcoin functionality with Counterparty assets. For example, Bitcoin actually has a form of smart contracts, limited smart contracts called Bitcoin Script. And Bitcoin Script is a way of locking Bitcoin Script is a way of giving the conditions under which your coins may be spent. So you can do multi-sig, you can do single signature, you can do time locks, you can lock coins until a certain block height. None of that works with Counterparty because Counterparty sort of, the data is on Bitcoin, but it doesn't integrate in any way with Bitcoin. That's much improved with Ordinals. Every Bitcoin transaction transfers Ordinals, and you can use all of the functionality of Bitcoin, the native multi-sig, single sig, time locks, everything using Ordinals transactions. Because they're just Bitcoin transactions. They're just normal Bitcoin transactions. So depending on your definition of on Bitcoin, if I kind of don't really count Counterparty, it uses Bitcoin as like a data layer, but it uses its own token and it doesn't use native Bitcoin transactions. I do want to shout out this guy named Stefan Vogler. He came up with his own system of doing NFTs on Bitcoin a long time ago. Which is actually very similar to the way that Ordinals works. But he's, I think, mostly an artist and not a technical guy. And so he never created a wallet. And when you wanted to transfer his NFTs, you had to construct these very carefully constructed Bitcoin transactions to transfer them to wallet to wallet. So I think that is really the only NFTs that have existed on Bitcoin before Ordinals. And those weren't popular because of the extremely high barrier to entry to using them and transferring them. But yeah, but let me say something nice about Counterparty because they get mad at me when I say mean things. I think the Counterparty community is awesome. The Counterparty, the vibe, the sort of degen Pepe, like a meme lord vibe, like I love, And they're gonna take some clip of me saying something mean and be like, Rodarmor is like an Counterparty hater, but it is what it is.
Only that clip will go viral. Just you like saying they're not real NFTs. Dang, that's it. I think, Michael, this is our smartest episode yet.
Yeah, there's a lot of technical mumbo jumbo in there.
Definitely our smartest.
I can keep going with the mumbo jumbo. Yeah. But honestly, like any questions you guys have about how it works are super welcome. I love explaining this stuff. And I think it's useful because I think most people don't understand the technical differences, and the technical differences are often very interesting and often very important.
Yeah, you were saying that there's a lot of problems on Ethereum, and I know you mentioned, I already forgot, the ISBF one or whatever, but
IPFS, which is actually a separate technology. Yeah.
But like, what are some of the problems that are on Ethereum that you don't see on Bitcoin besides that make you really not like ETH NFTs when it comes to storing, data as opposed to like the community and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. The way that Ethereum smart contracts and NFTs by default can often be changed by the people who create them. Like if a smart contract often will have an upgrade key or an admin key, and that means that although you can own the NFT in the contract, the people who issue the contract have the ultimate ability to unilaterally, change the content or change the ownership or issue more. And you can issue an NFT in such a way that it is immutable and it is guaranteed not to change. But that requires somebody to actually look at the code and read the code like line by line, which can often be very subtle, and make sure that there isn't like a hidden upgrade key or a hidden admin key, or that the content really can't be changed. And that's very expensive. As far as I know, nobody does that. People just create NFTs with random Solidity code, which is the programming language that most people use to program Ethereum contracts, and nobody really checks. So Ordinals are 100% immutable and 100% uncensorable, exactly the same as Bitcoin. Nobody can take one away from you or modify it, and there's no way for the data to go away. So those are the things that, like, if you have an Ethereum NFT, you have to read the code to make sure that your ownership of that NFT won't be compromised and that the content won't be changed. And that's simply not necessary on Ordinals, just due to the way that it works. Like there's no way to make a mutable inscription. Once you make an inscription, it's immutable and unchanging until the end of time. Also, for example, I think royalties have been a huge problem. I like the idea of royalties. I like the idea of artists getting paid for their work. I think that's a noble desire, but the implementation just doesn't work. There's no good way to implement royalties. And so there's been this race to the bottom. I'm sure you guys have been aware, as different marketplaces have basically just acknowledged the reality that they can't enforce royalties, and that other exchanges have, different marketplaces have come on to compete, with OpenSea, that don't charge royalties. And so OpenSea has done weird things like say, like, okay, well, you can only get royalties if your Ethereum NFT specifically doesn't allow being traded on these exchanges with no royalties. And I think it's like a really sad case of, like, the idea is good and the desire is noble, but there's simply no good way to enforce royalties for a variety of technical reasons. Like, the base reason is that, let's say you and me, Michael, like, you have an ape, like, I want to buy it, and I buy it.
How much you offering? One
He's selling it. He's selling it.
It's possible.
Yeah, 100.
Are we talking or are we talking?
We're talking.
Like,
we're
what's
talking.
going on?
So let's say I want to buy it from you for 100 ETH, and
sold.
Yeah. So, but like, so we do the transaction and I send you 100 ETH, but there's no reason that we actually have to report the true sale price on chain. So the on-chain sale price can just be 1 ETH, and I send you 99 ETH in an unrelated transaction. And there's also ways that we can do it, with escrow or a wrapper contract. There's always a way to get around reporting the true sale price. So it just isn't possible to enforce royalties. And it also, there's always going to be this competition between marketplaces where they're going to want to go to zero royalties. And there's been so much like chaos as people are like, I thought I was going to get royalties. I was told that NFTs were a way of getting like passive income. And it's not about whether royalties are good or bad. It's just there's no good implementation. It's not possible to implement royalties in a good way. So that's one thing that is nice about inscriptions is, like, listen, I'm sorry, there are no royalties. There will never be royalties on chain because there is no way to enforce royalties. And I've never, always been very clear that it's not possible to do. And so there's kind of no confusion there. Nobody thinks that there's royalties. There's very little confusion. And that kind of goes back to the simplicity. Inscriptions and ordinals, they lack a lot of the, you can do a lot more with an Ethereum smart contract. You can do different kinds of auctions. You can do like video game like functionality. You can do, interesting interactions between NFTs, like game like mechanics. But that all that cool functionality comes with a huge amount of complexity and a huge amount of like risk that like there's going to be a bug or something's going to go wrong, or that, you know, it has an admin key or backdoor key. But if you really just want immutable art and you want to own it, and you want to be able to sell it to somebody else to transfer that art, and you want it to really be like a painting on your wall that you own and that nobody else can change, that's what Ordinals provides. It's like a very stripped down kind of experience where you just get, you know, the content, the art, and you own it and you can transfer it to somebody else, and you don't need to. There aren't any bells and whistles, which if you want those bells and whistles, like that's bad. But it also means that if you don't want those bells and whistles and you don't want to think about those bells and whistles and you want to focus on the art and you don't want to worry about the technical side of it or something going wrong with code or whatever, with a smart contract code, then that's a benefit.
What's some of the coolest stuff that you've seen people put on Ordinals that you think that have gone on there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff. So and there's like, it's possible to do images, it's possible to do audio, it's possible to do video, and it's possible to do HTML. So you can do HTML and SVGs, which allow for animated content. Basically, any kind of content you would see on the web can go in an inscription. And so somebody inscribed a Doom clone. People have done games. I think there's been 3 games that I've seen so far that you can go and play. Somebody wrote in Python, the Python programming language, an implementation of some of the inscriptions protocol and then put it into an inscription. So you can use an inscription and download the code in an inscription to get other inscriptions. It's like self-hosted. It's like, the code is on chain. Somebody did a Doom clone, like a 3D Doom clone, where you can like a first person shooter where you can run around and shoot people in an inscription. Lots of generative art. And then a lot of people have been taking pictures of their pets and like putting it on chain with pictures of their like dog or cat or, and I just consider that like very cute. They just want to immortalize their pets, you know? Somebody recorded their farts. I think there's 2 farts.
That was
chain.
Jenny. That was Jenny.
Yeah.
I'm scared. Wait, I remember what was that one NFT project of like the girl that like jarred her farts and like sold them as NFTs or something? Or I don't even know.
That wasn't NFTs. She
No,
just
you
literally
know,
did that.
no, she made NFTs of them or something. I swear.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, she might have.
And I think you could redeem it for the real thing. I don't know.
Wow.
Anyway.
Honestly, that's pretty
You could
clever.
burn it for.
You could burn it. Oh my gosh.
These e-girls, they're getting sophisticated, you know?
Getting very creative. I kind of wish we would have invited Corporate Trash to this podcast. She's like obsessed with Bitcoin Ordinals. She always writes about it in her blog that she has. But
was she the guest that I remember like maybe a month and a half ago, you had a guest on, a woman who talked a lot about the technical side of it. I don't remember who
Brooke
that was.
Lacey. Brooke Lacey.
Yeah, that was awesome.
She's amazing. Awesome. Brooke is awesome.
Wow, when I was not even here.
You weren't here. Yeah.
But now Corporate Trash we had like a year ago, I think.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, you were holding it down
and also the generative art. There's been some cool generative art on chain, and I've just been really happy to. Like, that's just cool. I just like seeing people do creative things. I think it's a little overblown for me to call myself an artist, but like I've made some, programmer art and generative art. And so that's my favorite when people do like cool art. And it is also cool to see people doing, random Pepes and like tons of weird like collections and, just cool stuff. It's all very chaotic. Unfortunately, right now with the BRC20 tokens, being such a high percentage of inscriptions. Like when you go to ordinals.com, you just see these like shitty like text like strings just dominating the front page. So yeah, that's annoying. But yeah, the art and just the weird stuff is fun and cool.
How about what Yuga did? What do you think of that?
I mean, I think Yuga Labs, I think they're a bunch of morons. I think they're technically incompetent. I don't remember the details of what they did, but they did something that was fully that wasn't essentially people just sent them money and then they sent back the NFT. Like there wasn't a lot of like user protection. I also think they were doing pre-sales. It really irritates me when people do pre-sales, like make something and then sell it don't be like, I need your money to make like a bunch of stupid monkey pictures, and then maybe you'll get something. Like, I think that's just a very bad precedent to accept and encourage, right? Like, listen, if you're going to make something cool, make it and then show it to me and maybe I'll buy it. Don't like promise a bunch. And then like, I remember, I don't remember when it was, but wasn't there a really disappointing like art reveal recently? Like in the last like couple months?
From Yuga?
No, different. Not from Yuga.
Oh,
no, it's
The
like
Azerbaijan. You talking about Azerbaijan?
yeah, I think that was it. Yeah. And I think that's exactly what happens when you do pre-sales, right? You pay people a lot of money and then they pay a bunch of like, Chinese 15-year-olds to make shit in MS Paint. And then you see it and it's fucking ass and everybody's furious. But it's like you paid them for this like sight unseen. Like, what do you expect,
Wait, yeah, we need more Yuga slander because Michael's like debating selling his ape, and it's like he kind of really wants to because he's like, oh, 100K, like that would be clutch.
Yeah,
but it's also kind of like he's had it for so long that it's kind of like one of
let's
those
slander
things.
Yuga, really drive the price down, make it an easy decision to sell your ape.
No, he needs to sell it.
Don't try.
Wait till he sells it, then we can drive the price down.
No, you guys can sell it and then release this episode. So another thing that I hate about Yuga,
and we're under contract for 100 ETH right now. Is where I'm at.
Yeah, Casey, we got it on the pod.
We're under contract.
We're talking. Yeah,
we have a verbal agreement as far as I'm concerned.
One thing that I don't like about Yuga is that they're really eager to use lawyers and threats of copyright stuff to enforce their IP rights. I think that copyright is stupid. I think that it's harmful. I think that like if you want to copy data, you should be able to do whatever you want with it. And the idea that you're going to hire a lawyer to like threaten somebody with like, the government with guns to like take their shit is just stupid. And like the idea that Yuga would both claim to like ever be like decentralized at all and be interested in that and be interested in like open culture. But then anytime somebody does something with like an ape that Yuga doesn't like they just are going to sue them. Like, I think it's stupid.
Michael, are you sold?
Sucks. I hear that. That's a crappy company, dude.
Have they been? Yeah.
Screw you. We've never had them on actually.
No, now they're going to be scared to come on. Listen.
Nah, they don't listen to this.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Michael's like, yes, they do.
Like,
I'm really hoping they do.
They're in Michael's DMs, like crying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, why'd
on.
you say that about us on the podcast? They really care. They have $400 million. They're worried about what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the amount of money in this space is also insane. Like, and the amount of money that's been poured into investing in ordinals. Like, there's a bunch of really stupid like shitcoin companies. I don't even want to mention them by name, like to dignify them with like, but like they're basically just like, they're companies that claim to be Bitcoin, but then actually it's just some like shitcoin, and they have so much money that they kind of don't know what to do with. So a lot of them are pumping money into ordinals and making exchanges and making marketplaces, even though I think the actual like volume of sales on ordinals is not that high. I mean, it's still relatively small. But they're investing a ton, so it's totally insane.
Wow.
So let's say, okay, someone's hearing about ordinals for the first time. I mean, personally, I've never really looked into ordinals. I'm like, wow, I'm really mind blown here by everything. I guess, where do you go to buy Bitcoin ordinals or like create Bitcoin ordinals? Is it ordinals.com?
Yeah, so you can go to ordinals.com, and also you can go to github.com/Casey/ORD. And that is the sort of reference implementation of ordinals. It is not very user-friendly. It is a command line wallet and explorer. In fact, when you go to ordinals, so it's called Ord, that's the implementation. That's like the program that scans, that it connects to a Bitcoin node, and it looks through all the Bitcoin transactions to see all the inscriptions and where they are and who owns them. And actually, when you go to ordinals.com, which is a computer that I run in the cloud, that is just running Ord. So you can get your own version of ordinals.com by running Ord on your computer. And if you that requires a Bitcoin node. Bitcoin, the program that implements Bitcoin is called Bitcoin D. So Ord talks to an instance of Bitcoin D, and it can also make inscription transactions. Ord implements a Bitcoin wallet. And so You can make inscriptions from the command line, and you can also view all the inscriptions that are out there and transfer inscriptions. It's actually very simple as far as command line applications go. I would encourage people to try it out. It does need a relatively fast computer with a lot of storage space. I think it needs about 500 gigs of space, because maybe like 750 free gigs of space, because it needs the full Bitcoin blockchain, and it also needs a little space for itself for the index. But yeah, it's very simple software. And then there's also a huge number of wallets and marketplaces that I can't recommend at all. It's like the Wild West out there. I don't really know what's good or bad. I've heard that OpenOrdex is good, but I think that might also be a command line sort of implementation. Yeah, and I just want to emphasize like the simplicity. Like, I sat down and I wrote a computer program, and that computer program just connects to your Bitcoin node if you run it, and looks through all the transactions and says where the inscriptions are and what they're doing. And it's not more complicated than that. It's not some weird like DEX or some bridge or some Rube Goldberg machine like off in the darkness run by some mysterious shadowy programmers. It's not a DAO. There's no smart contracts. It's just this computer program that you run on your computer, like Bitcoin, and anybody can run it. And it's exactly, if you run it, you get exactly what's on ordinals.com.
Ordinals.com, very user friendly.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I would say, I don't want to claim that it's user friendly. Like,
no, I'm just joking. You were like, it's all right there, super simple. And I went over there, and it's like, well, it's like, I don't
it's
even.
all
It's like a whole nother language.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Oh,
yeah.
And then I went to the GitHub. Your GitHub.
I'm like,
one.
damn, I'm
like,
too dumb
what?
for this. I don't know.
No. It's not. Nobody's too dumb for this. It's too complicated. You know, like the. I mean, I'm just a single developer with help from a few other developers. And so, I didn't raise any money. I don't have like a team. So there's no like nice fancy GUI or nice fancy GUI wallet. It's all sort of a community effort. And development is incredibly slow because I'm pretty burnt out at the moment. So yeah, that's why there's no like GUI or whatever. But that's also the thing that's good about it. Like, there's no weird company behind it. And there's no way that I could rug. If I released a change to Ord that you didn't like, the code is online. The previous version of the code is online. You can just run the old version and you'll see the old inscriptions. There's no no rug is possible. Unfortunately, it means also that I can't make one thing that's kind of stressful for me right now is that I would like to make a lot of changes to Ordinals, a lot of improvements, and it's really simple stuff. But now I need to make those improvements very, very carefully. And I need to like tell everybody what I want to do. And everybody, like the community, basically has to agree that it's a good idea, because I can't unilaterally make changes. I have to essentially, just like Bitcoin, I have to propose changes, and some critical mass of the community has to adopt those changes.
That's like truly decentralized. Okay, now I see how it's like Bitcoin Ordinals, it feels like it's truly decentralized NFTs.
Yeah.
Versus I can see how there's so many like centralized aspects to like ETH NFTs. And it's like, I was going to ask your thoughts on Flow, which is very centralized.
Flow is like the sort of kind of commercial blockchain. Do they claim to be decentralized?
No, they don't. They don't claim to be decentralized.
That's the thing is I actually think that's kind of fine. I mean, there are lots of things that are not decentralized. Like when you go to a cafe and you get a cup of coffee, like there's nothing decentralized about that cafe. But if you pay a good price and you get you pay a fair price and you get a good product, there's no problem with that if it's not claiming to be decentralized. So if Flow is like, yeah, like we have our fucking centralized blockchain, it runs on I don't even know if it's a blockchain. We have our centralized platform, it runs on Amazon. We give you these digital assets on our centralized platform. And like the upside is that it's super user friendly and you can just log into the website to do whatever you want with it. And like when you want to buy them, you just swipe your credit card and it has all the problems of paying with things with credit cards. Like, that's fine. My problem is really when people make things that aren't decentralized and they claim that they're decentralized with a bunch of sort of smoke and mirrors, right? Like, I'm not mad at like, I don't know, McDonald's for like selling hamburgers in a in a centralized way. McDonald's is fully centralized. Like it's a corporate structure and top down decisions. And you go to McDonald's and you don't have any say in what's on the menu, even if you'd really like them to bring the McRib back or whatever. That's fine. McDonald's doesn't claim to be centralized. They just say like, yeah, we're a company. We sell you hamburgers. Like buy a hamburger or GTFO. The problem is when you have these weird things that like claim to be decentralized. Like what are the most popular Ethereum L2s right now?
You got Polygon, Immutable X.
Oh damn, those are I don't even know. What about the optimistic rollups? Is an optimism?
What's that one? Is that what it's called? It's
I don't
it
know
might be
what that is.
Optimism. I know what you're talking about. They did an airdrop not too long ago.
Yeah. Anyways, like the optimistic rollups, like they claim to be decentralized, but if you get down to it, they have sort of like upgrade keys, and whoever has those upgrade keys can unilaterally fully change any detail of the contract. And so they're actually just multi-sigs that are controlled by the people in the project. And so same with like, for example, MakerDAO. I mean, that's all centralized stable coins that are mostly backing that. So the issue is when these projects that aren't really decentralized claim to be decentralized. And also when they're just issuing like tokens and whatever, like, yeah. But like, listen, centralized hamburgers, centralized flow, like, yeah, no fucking problem. Like, go crazy.
Would you want, because I know you said that you hate the government, and I feel like a lot of people in Web3 hate the government. Like, I don't know anyone that likes the government, but like, would you?
They're doing an amazing job.
They're doing a great job.
Our tax dollars are spent impeccably.
Donald Trump was an amazing president with no problems. Joe Biden is an amazing president with no problems. We're going from strength to strength here.
Yeah. And it's good. We're going to have another rematch of those two in 2024.
Can't wait, man. Can't wait.
Perfect.
Awesome.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
But okay,
those are
question,
two great options.
My question here is like, would you want the government to adopt crypto? And like, I guess, how would you see the government benefiting from crypto? And like, what would you want to see them adopting? I guess, if you do want to see them adopting crypto at all.
Well, I mean, I really like, as a Bitcoin maximalist, I make a strong distinction between Bitcoin and everything else. Everything else is, essentially the problem with the government is that the government has very bad incentives. In fact, they don't really have any incentives at all. They can print money. They can take our money by just taking the men with guns, send it to your door if they want it, taxes or whatever. They can create really stupid regulations. So I don't really want to see them adopt anything in particular. I'd like their power to make stupid decisions and do harmful things to be limited. And one way that the government has a lot of power, just picking on the US government, because I'm an American citizen, they have the ability to print dollars, and the dollar is very widely used and widely accepted. So that means that they sort of have this infinite spigot of money that they can use to do stupid things, and also to create inflation, which makes our money less valuable, right? Like it's sort of like the ultimate silent tax, where they just print more money and the dollars in our pockets are worth less, even though we didn't, consent to them printing that money. So mostly I would like to see people adopt Bitcoin. And the more that people adopt Bitcoin and use Bitcoin and store their wealth in it and use it for transactions, the less and less interested people will be in dollars, and the less and less power the government will have from its ability to print dollars. And in fact, at a certain point, if people reject dollars, dollars will become less and less valuable, and Bitcoin will become more and more valuable. And that will just it will just reduce a huge slice of the government's power. And because the government has very bad incentives, I think that is generally good. I would basically just like the government to be able to do less and less and interfere in our lives less and less. And people adopting Bitcoin sort of reduces the ability of the government to interfere in our lives in a monetary way.
Go buy Bitcoin, folks.
Yeah, buy Bitcoin
right now. Buy Bitcoin. Let's do this.
It's not too late,
It's not too late. No, this is actually the perfect time, right? Because we're in the bear market. The price is low. For buying purposes, I guess.
Financial advice.
No, not financial advice.
Listen, Jenny and Michael,
But-
they might not give you financial advice. I'm giving you financial advice. Buy Bitcoin. I mean, don't like it like buy Bitcoin slowly. Bitcoin is highly volatile. There's no reason that it couldn't, fall by 50% or 75%. But the supply is fixed and the long-term trend is up. And so it'll probably just keep, fluctuating up and down. And so if you're
Hitting
comfortable
new
holding
all-time
it,
highs. Yep.
yeah. If you're comfortable holding it for, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, it will definitely go up.
25 years. Yep.
Yeah. Barring something hugely unexpected.
Years,
and and the US dollar is explicitly designed to go down. The US, the Federal Reserve targets an inflation rate of between 2 and 4%, and they often overshoot and create higher inflation. So the dollar is designed to lose value, and Bitcoin has a fixed supply, which is very hard to change. So buy Bitcoin.
Do you use your Bitcoin to buy stuff with now, especially now that there's more there's Bitcoin ATMs, and there's just all this stuff now that we didn't have before where you're able to pay with Bitcoin. Even PayPal, you can pay with Bitcoin. There's just more things you can do with your Bitcoin. Do you spend your Bitcoin?
I wish that I could claim to be cool and actually do things with Bitcoin. But no, I don't do very much with Bitcoin. I sit on it. And although I was able to pay the programmers that helped me out, Liam and Raf, in Bitcoin, and that was very cool because Liam is in Canada, Raf is in Germany, and I could just make payments directly to them for their work on the project without any intermediary, without I don't know if you guys have ever made an international wire transfer, but it is fucking horrible. It is absolutely fucking horrible. I've had one time I needed to pay somebody in Denmark some rent, or they needed to pay me some rent. And it was a multi-month thing where some typo that they had made on a form meant that the money was just stuck in limbo. I learned Spanish in Guatemala, 10 years ago. And I made really good friends with a Guatemalan family, and I still send them money every month. And I do that by, I forget what it was. It was some transfer service. And I'm over here just sending $100 a month to this Guatemalan lady. And they're saying that it's needs to be reviewed, and eventually refused to let me use the platform. I needed to use a separate platform. And so Bitcoin solves that problem, and I do use it to make international transfers like that. But I don't do anything interesting with Bitcoin. When I need money, I sell Bitcoin, and then I do that on a service called River Financial. If you go to river.com, I'm not a paid shill of River, but I like the company a lot. And it's sort of like a Coinbase alternative that doesn't have all the shit coins. So you can just sell Bitcoin, the dollars go to your bank account, or you can buy Bitcoin with dollars from your bank account. So yeah, I'm a pretty boring user of Bitcoin. I would like to use it more, but I think it's kind of just not there yet. The adoption isn't there. And I don't know, do you guys, there's something called the Lightning Network, which is a way of making instant micropayments with Bitcoin. And that works pretty well, but the adoption and the infrastructure kind of isn't there yet. And I think that's what's going to very much unlock being able to use Bitcoin as a payment system. Right now, it's very good as sort of a value storage and transferring large amounts of money system.
It's gold, kind of. It's just people just holding on to it.
Yeah, totally. But actually, if you need, go ahead.
Sorry, they use it in El Salvador, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or is it Honduras or El Salvador?
El Salvador, but the situation is very complicated. The government basically said everybody in El Salvador Bitcoin will become legal tender in El Salvador. So that's good. It has a sort of official protected legal status. And they rolled out this Bitcoin wallet for everybody in the country. I think the Bitcoin wallet had a lot of problems. It had a lot of bugs because governments are pretty trash at writing software. But yeah, it does have some use. I think it's kind of just, with Bitcoin, it's always going to be a really slow burn. There's no company that is behind it that is there to put a huge amount of money into it. It's really just as people adopt it bit by bit by bit. And as people realize that it's a good alternative to the existing financial system. The existing financial system is hard to deal with and painful and often very capricious and arbitrary, the regulations.
Yep. I've seen videos of people in El Salvador, the markets going back and forth, just tapping their phones, paying But yeah, there probably are. I'm sure there are problems as well. So
Mm.
it's pretty neat to see.
Yeah, totally.
Well, that's all the questions I have.
I have one more.
Okay.
So like if somebody, so say like I wanted to inscribe some NFTs, some art, whatever it is on Bitcoin, where would I start? What would I do if I was somebody?
Good question, Michael Keene. You would go to github.com/Casey/ORD.
Wait, I already asked this, Michael.
You would
Kind
follow
of.
the installation instructions.
Yeah, you
to install the
asked
software.
like how do people get into it, buy and
but
sell?
but
like,
I actually have
what if I wanted to actually make one?
I have some really specific advice. I suggest that people who are artists who have content that they want to inscribe team up with people who are kind of technical. And you don't have to be that technical. You just kind of have to know how to use command line tools, which is a pretty basic, skill. You don't need to learn how to program. You just need to know how to run some commands.
And GPT can teach you.
GPT can teach you. Yep. And form like a little team to make some inscriptions. It's not that hard. And actually, if you want to go, the latest episode of my podcast, the Hell Money podcast.
What is it called? Hail Money?
Hell Money.
Oh, Hell Money.
Hell
nice
Money. Yeah.
Nice plug.
Yeah, I got to show, it's hellpodcast.money is the website. And I think it's YouTube, Hell Money Podcast. Me and my friend Aaron do it. The last episode is some like weird Bitcoin is a megalith thing. But the previous two episodes before that are these very simple tutorials where we show how you can go from with a Mac, because Macs are good for it, like step by step to use the software. And the software is a command line tool. It's not like a GUI wallet, but it's not that complicated. And you can do it. We make an inscription on the show, and it's not hard.
Give me the podcast website one more time.
Oh, hellpodcast.money, but really just anywhere fine podcasts are sold, search for How Many Podcasts.
I'll send you the link, Michael.
No, I got it already.
It's on YouTube. It's on Spotify. We had a bunch of Ordinals episodes, like the Ordinals Guy Goes to Therapy episode was pretty good.
I must have been there before because my browser knew it.
Dope.
Earlier in the podcast, Jenny mentioned that, we were like, yeah, it's cool when somebody cool reaches out to you. When I was explaining to them earlier this week when you signed up for it, because it was like a month, like I sent you the Calendly, like whatever it was, but I talked to Jenny and Andy like a month ago. And then a couple of days ago, I wrote, I was like, yeah, Casey, he said he's a fan of the podcast. Like, and then as soon as I wrote that and sent to them, I was like, wait, am I being catfished? Like, is it something
no.
Fake?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were like, wait.
I was like, actually, let me.
We were like, double checking.
I listened. Like when I got interested in NFTs, I started listening to I listened to like at least one episode of a bunch of different NFT podcasts.
That's
and
amazing.
I won't name names, but I was not a fan of most NFT podcasts. They were just like so shilly and like, but yeah, I always thought you guys were like super genuine about it, just as being like fans of the space and like fans of the tech and fans of the art. So yeah, it was a good way to learn about.
I could tell by the way you described it. I could tell by the way you just that you definitely listened. So that's what's up. We appreciate that.
Totally. Yeah. So yeah, thanks so much for having me on. It's great. And you guys want to make some inscriptions? Definitely, you should make some official, NFT Catcher Pod inscriptions.
That's what I was thinking. Something fun for the listeners,
dude. And it's not super hard if you found somebody who is like a computer person who likes. Maybe he's a little bit of a programmer or like just runs Linux. Although Macs are the best way to do it. It's not super hard. You can definitely get it done. Oh yeah, and if you want to go to if you want to go hang out with some inscription degens, you can go to the Ordinals Discord. Somehow I'm the moderator of a 17,000 person owner of the 17,000 person Discord. I have no freaking idea how that happened.
You fired it up and it just filled up and it
just exploded. It's out of control. So yeah, it's discord.gg/ordinals. Go check it out. Yeah. And then you can ask questions and degen out and whatever. Yeah.
I think I'm going to make the attempt to inscribe something.
Dope. Yeah. It's also a good excuse to play with Bitcoin. It's like, a lot of the time Bitcoin maxis are yelling at people to use Bitcoin and saying like, oh, you should use Bitcoin. But there aren't a lot of like applications that are fun to use on Bitcoin, and Ordinals and inscriptions actually provide like a reason to get into it, a reason to use it. and a way to have fun with it, even like beyond any sort of financial sense, you know? So I think that's pretty valuable. I don't know.
Amazing.
Love that. Cool. Well, yeah, I mean, we'll probably link, I think we should link, I just put it in our chat. I think we should link the tutorials on how to, the part 1 and part 2, how to make an ordinal inscription. I definitely want to watch that because I'm like, I am very intrigued.
Yeah, I'm gonna check that out too for sure.
Yeah, and the Discord so that if anyone has questions,
that's a nice podcast profile picture you have there, Casey.
What is it?
It's got like you're in like a costume.
Oh yeah, I was in a rat costume. Like Aaron's looking all cute, and I'm looking like haggard in a rat costume, like I just crawled out of a sewer.
Yeah, pretty much.
Love it. Oh my gosh,
cool.
That's great. How many podcasts? All right, well, awesome. Yeah, this really exceeded my expectations. I didn't really know. I was like, I don't even know what to ask. I barely know anything. But I feel like you did a really great job explaining Bitcoin ordinals. And like I said, this was our most intelligent episode we've recorded.
You guys are too kind. You guys are way too kind.
So yeah, Casey, thank you so much for joining us.
Awesome.
Yeah, and with that said, hopefully you guys learned a lot about Bitcoin ordinals in this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and we will catch you in the next one. Peace.
Thank you for tuning in to the NFT Catcher podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and learned something new about the exciting world of NFTs. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you really love what you're hearing, please leave us a rating and review on your favorite platform. If you want to stay up to date with the latest news and insights from the NFT space, be sure to follow us on all the socials at NFT Catcher Pod. You can follow Jennifer at Jennifer_pseudo and Michael at NFTicket. I'm your producer, Andy, and I'm at AJC254. Our theme song's by It's Just Los. We always appreciate your feedback and support, which helps us reach more people and bring you informative and engaging content about NFTs. We look forward to bringing you more great NFT content in future episodes. Thanks for listening. Peace.